All right, let's get right into it. You probably remember mitochondria from biology class, right? They're those little bean-shaped things with one very famous nickname. But what if that's not even close to the whole story? What if the powerhouse label we all memorized is really just chapter 1 of a much, much bigger book?
Yeah, I'm asking you directly. What if the powerhouse of the cell is only half the story? Because we're about to see how these tiny organelles are so much more than just little energy factories. Turns out they're wrapped up in some of the biggest questions about our health, from cancer all the way to diabetes.
So, first up, let's go beyond that old textbook definition. It's time to pull back the curtain and see what mitochondria are really doing inside our cells.
And this changes the whole game. Forget just generating ATP, the cell's energy cache. These guys are running a full-blown command center. They're in charge of cell communication. They literally decide when a cell should live or die, a process called apoptosis, and they even produce these things called reactive oxygen species, or ROS, which act like critical signal flares. And maybe most importantly, they do all of this using their own completely unique set of blueprints.
And this is that unique blueprint. It's called mitochondrial DNA, or mTNA. It's this tiny circular genome that lives inside the mitochondria, totally separate from the main DNA you have in your cell's nucleus. It's super compact, but it packs a serious punch, holding the instructions for 13 absolutely essential proteins that run the cell's energy assembly line. You can think of this little circle of code as the master plan for our entire cellular power grid. So that begs the question, right? What happens when that unique mitochondrial blueprint goes wrong? Well, the consequences can be huge. It can actually lead to a completely different kind of blueprint, one for cancer. To really get the connection here, you have to know how something like colorectal cancer usually develops. It follows a pretty well-known path called the adenoma-carcinoma sequence. So it starts with perfectly healthy tissue in the colon. Then a small non-cancerous growth called an adenopolyp forms. And over time, that little polyp can morph into a dangerous, invasive carcinoma. This is the exact pathway scientists are watching to find clues.
And here is one of those massive clues. Just look at this chart. It shows the activity level of a key mitochondrial gene, MTCOI. On the left, in normal healthy tissue, its expression is low. In the middle, in that benign polyp, it creeps up. And then, bam! On the right, in full-blown cancer, its expression is through the roof. That's not a coincidence. It's a clear, unmistakable pattern that perfectly tracks the disease's progression.
So what does all this rising gene activity actually mean? Well, it's directly tied to a huge surge in cellular stress, specifically something called oxidative stress from those ROS signal flares we mentioned earlier. This tells us that the mitochondria aren't just innocent bystanders watching the cancer develop, no way. Their activity, their signals, seem to be a core part of the engine that's actually driving it forward.
Okay, let's switch gears from cancer to another huge health challenge, diabetes. This really shows just how versatile these organelles are, because in this case, it's not just about more or less activity. It's all about a super delicate balancing act that mitochondria help control.
Now, to understand this balancing act, you gotta meet the main character, a protein called NRF2. The best way to think about NRF2 is as a cellular master switch. It's what's known as a transcription factor, which is a fancy way of saying it can flip hundreds of other genes on or off. It's in charge of managing stress, overseeing metabolism, and running the cell's quality control for all its proteins. It is an unbelievably powerful regulator.
And its job description is vast. It manages the cell's internal stress levels by controlling antioxidants. It oversees proteostasis. Think of that as the cell's cleanup and recycling crew for damaged proteins. And, of course, it has a massive say in metabolism, telling the cell how to use its fats, sugars, and iron. It's a true jack-of-all-trades.
This right here shows one of the most fundamental rules of biology. Context is everything. When it comes to diabetes, NRF2 can be both a hero and a villain. A short, sharp burst of activation is protective. It shields the pancreas and prevents kidney damage. But chronic, out-of-control activation completely flips the script. It can actually make insulin resistance worse and cause the liver to pump out way too much sugar. The big lesson here? It is all about balance.
So we've seen the huge role mitochondria play in disease, but how on earth do scientists figure all this stuff out? That brings us to our next section, decoding our mitochondria. This is where we get a peek at the incredible tools that let us listen in on the conversations happening deep inside our cells. And this is just a glimpse of the amazing tech scientists have now. First, they can literally edit the code. Using tools like MUT/CRISPR, they can act like a pair of genetic scissors to cut, paste, and even fix faulty mitochondrial DNA. Second, they can watch it work in real time. They attach these little fluorescent probes, think of them as tiny glowing tags, to mitochondrial parts and just watch them move and do their thing. And third, and this is incredible, they can measure the energy being produced inside the muscle of a living person with a non-invasive scanner. It's called magnetic resonance spectroscopy, and it lets them see the cell's power output without making a single cut.
So, with all this mind-blowing technology and all this new knowledge, what's the big picture? Let's zoom out for our final section, listening to ourselves. What is the fundamental message our mitochondria are trying to tell us?
I think this statement just nails it. The real story isn't about one single gene or one single protein. It's about realizing that these tiny organelles are sitting right at the center of this incredibly complex, interconnected web of signals and processes and codes that, together, determine our health. So, let's just lock in the big ideas from today. First, mitochondria are way more than just powerhouses. They are complex command centers. We now know that their signals are directly linked to the progression of major diseases. We've also seen that cellular health is all about a delicate balancing act. And finally, thanks to some unbelievable technology, we're finally starting to understand the signals our mitochondria are sending. And that really brings us to the final thought. With tools that let us edit their DNA, watch them work, and measure their energy with such incredible precision, you have to wonder, if our mitochondria really do hold the secrets to our health, are we finally, after all this time, starting to learn their language?